Zimbabwe's Foreign Affairs Minister Sibusiso Moyo maintains that Zimbabwe's police acted within the limits of the country's laws following Friday's clashes between police and opposition protesters. Several EU diplomatic missions accredited to Zimbabwe issued a joint statement urging the Zimbabwean government to recognize and stop violating its citizens' human rights, including the right to peaceful protest.
Minister Moyo said that the government of Zimbabwe's re-engagement efforts were on track and welcomed SADC's recent pronouncement against sanctions on Zimbabwe.
I've just heard about that comment by the number of capitals, but that is their right, that is their independent position. Our position is that sanctions are outdated, as you made the relationship with the SADC's position. SADC's position has also said sanctions are outdated and they must go. And the African Union is also saying the same thing. Now, to try and bring the issue of police a reaction, police is an independent organ of the state, which makes its own assessment, and I've issued a statement to that towards that issue, and which deals with situations as they assess. And they made a legal position and they presented it. It was challenged, and unfortunately it was not, to them, it was not successful. But thereafter, they proceeded with the demonstration, which was now fundamentally an illegal demonstration in terms of the law. So, whether the police used excessive force or not, we will always, as government, desire that the police should use commensurate force or response to demonstrations. But also, it is a very subjective matter, as you may understand, to say at what point, when the protesters wanted to enter Mutaba building here, what could the police have done except throw smoke? These are the issues which can always be debated day and night. That's why I'm saying it is their right to say so. But I think we must be clear here about the circumstances, about the situation which has been developing on the ground. Re-engagement is a process. I've always said that. It is a process, it is not an event, and it takes two. But one thing which this dispensation and government and the people have decided is that we must move on with or without sanctions. Because we believe that sanctions are now out of date and they are irrelevant to the environment which characterizes this country at the moment.
Zimbabwe's Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Information, Nick Mangwana, now joins us via Skype. Minister Mangwana, good evening and thank you so much for joining us on the Globe.
For having me.
Now, Minister, Foreign Affairs Minister maintains... The Foreign Affairs Minister maintains that police acted legally and lawfully following the clashes on Friday where protesters were dispersed. What's your take on this? Is this the case?
That's exactly the case. We had the courts on our side having passed a judgment to the effect that the protest could not go ahead. But we also had people who continued to hold the illegal protests, and the police were right to disperse them.
Now, why are people not allowed to protest in Zimbabwe? Seemingly, just in a short space of time, within 5 days, that protests have been stopped continuously. Why is this the case? Why do the people of Zimbabwe not have the right or to be able to protest in a peaceful manner?
People are allowed to protest in a peaceful manner, but as you probably very well know that the vice chairman of the opposition did make threats a couple of weeks ago, and before then, a month or so ago, to overthrow the government. He actually declared war and says, we are taking the war to Mnangagwa's doorsteps. Now, if you look at the history that the MDC has had, including the unfortunate incident of 1 August 2018 and the incident that happened between the 14th and the 16th of January 2019, you cannot call those peaceful protests. Let me start with the latest, which is the January ones. We had police stations under siege, under attack. Police stations being burned, people going in there, looking for armory. A policeman being bludgeoned to death. Shops being looted and burned. Buses being burned. That's not a peaceful protest. Now, when threats are made in that context, a government has to make a choice. Does the right to protest supersede every other right the other citizens have? If we roll back again a few more months to the incident of August the 1st, which was subject to the Moshande Commission, those people were on the ground, and there was a lot of media on the ground. They know how it all started. People were trying to go to the results center in the Rainbow Towers to burn it. They even smashed the gate to get in there. People were trying to jump into ZANU-PF headquarters to burn it. Every car, bus, or anything that the ZANU-PF sign was burned. The provincial headquarters were burned. Cars and everything was burned. These are not peaceful protests. Mm-hmm. So, what are we saying? We're saying that it's okay to have peaceful protests in Zimbabwe. But when all intelligence on the ground tells you that these are not peaceful protests, when you find catapults and other slingshots and stones ready to smash people and smash things up, then the police has got the right and the obligation, constitutional, that is, to protect life and property. That is what we are dealing with here. Other than that, people are free to march in Zimbabwe as they wish. They are free to protest and to have processions on condition they are not peaceful. They are peaceful, rather, not marches to go and try to overthrow a government. How do you throw a government besides burning things up? Like they were doing. So
now, Minister Mangwana, just to find out from you, with regards to reports of fears from the government side of a Sudan-style protest, which would lead to maybe the overthrowing of the government of Zimbabwe, are there such fears within the government structures?
No, none whatsoever. We do not fear people coming and singing and what have you. It doesn't matter. It's their right. But what we do not have, one, is the wanton destruction of property. The upsetting of a constitutional order. That's a problem. Because the whole idea is of a political expression is not to overthrow the government of the day, which government was duly elected. That's not the idea. But in this particular case, that's their idea. So what do you want? What do you prefer? Proactively from the response from government, or government waits for things to burn and then they respond. I think so far we have had preservation of property and life. And it's not only what the government says. You saw what happened in Bulawayo. It's the business community. It's everybody, every organization, business organization was saying, no, we do not want this protest because our livelihoods are threatened by these people because they are not peaceful.
Now, let's speak about the EU's joint statement. This is from several EU diplomatic missions who are accredited to Zimbabwe, stating that the government should not stop its citizens or violate its citizens' human rights, including a right to peaceful protest.
Well, what the EU says, the EU and other missions, they pointed to the Constitution of Zimbabwe. We have a High Court in Zimbabwe based on that Constitution, founded on that Constitution. So when the High Court speaks, and when the High Court says the protest cannot go ahead, it is the Constitution that is spoken. So I don't know what Constitution they have outside the framework of the institutions in Zimbabwe. I don't know what Constitution they have. When the Constitutional Court, which is the apex court in Zimbabwe, spoke on the legitimacy of President Mnangagwa's election. And somebody else countered that. We didn't even hear all these missions saying, no, the rule of law and the constitution should prevail. But what we have seen is some of these missions go into houses of the very person that uttered the threat to overthrow the government, to take, I quote, the war to the doorsteps of the government, of the president. The war in Zimbabwe. So they should speak. If they're going to be non-partisan, they should speak to these issues.
Now, Minister Mangwana, we are running out of time, and I'd like to cover a few issues. SADC's recent pronouncement against sanctions on Zimbabwe. Do you think such action is going to, ensure that Zimbabwe gets sanctions removed against them or uplifted against Zimbabwe after the call and the protest and the reaction from the police against protesters?
We are very pragmatic about these issues. When the sanctions were imposed on Zimbabwe, the United Nations had refused to pass such through a veto by Russia and China, among other African protests. Now, these sanctions were imposed on Zimbabwe unilaterally. So whether the world says the sanctions should go, the Americans will do whatever the Americans want. These sanctions have been, Zimbabwe has been under sanctions for at least 18 years from 2001. So, and there is a lot of bad things that has happened everywhere else, which, when you talk of things happening to Zimbabwe is a peaceful country, but no sanctions has been imposed. So the decision, whether Zidera goes or not, is down to the Americans. Especially Zidera, because that's the most stringent sanctions we are under. But what we will do as a nation is to continue to reform, is to continue to open the democratic space. But that does not mean making all citizens vulnerable, because there are a few urban supporters of MDC who wants to upset the constitutional order. No. But we will continue opening reforming and opening the democratic space. Whether these guys are going to remove the sanctions or not, we will persevere in reforming and in transforming and ensuring that our citizens can reach and attain that prosperity that we wish for them.
Minister Mangwana, very quickly, just in wrapping up, let's speak about the impact on investment in the country, where an invitation has been issued by the president for investors to come to Zimbabwe and, put in their money. And when such scenes are seen all over the world, what do you think the impact of these actions will be?
Investors can choose where they make profits. There is not one single decision that informs whether investors invest in a country or not. Now, investors have even been known to invest in places where there is actually a raging war. It happens. But in this particular case, we know that if serious investors will look for the opportunity to make money, and they will come to Zimbabwe, not because some protests, people have been stopped from smashing buildings, not because people have been stopped from stoning policemen. No, that actually is an incentive for investors to come rather than the other way around.
Minister Mangwana, thank you so much for your time. We'll leave it there for now. That is Zimbabwe's Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Information, Nick Mangwana, now joining us via